And was it also while you were at the CSIR when you had India's biggest demolition project land on your table?
Oh,
was
yes.
that something that happened then as well?
That happened then, and that was again one of those coincidences that I was posted at Dehradun, and about 50 kilometers away, the Central Building Research Institute in Roorkee, their director retired and the new director was not yet in place. Okay. So I was asked to take additional charge for a few months. And during that time, the demolition date came forward. It was a very interesting project. It was a pair of twin towers in Noida, Sector 93A, and the builder there had violated the floor space index and also violated the terms of the green zone development for the previous development he'd done next door, which was called Emerald Court. So the Emerald Court RWA, so the ECORWA as they call themselves, had some very, very persistent, perseverant and socially conscious people, a former chief of police, a retired lawyer, an administrator. And these people decided they were not going to bow down. So they first pursued it in the local court, then the Allahabad High Court, which until 2014, with various deferments of dates, was trying to encourage a settlement, I think. But by 2014, it was very clear that violations had taken place, and then they ordered a demolition. But of course, then the case went to Supreme Court. It takes time over there. And in 2021, the Supreme Court upheld the High Court's judgment. But then the question was, how do you demolish it? These were two 40-foot towers, higher than the Qutub Minar. They were right next to the nearest building of Emerald Court, which was 9 meters, 27 feet away. So, right, there was no known playbook for such a demolition.
Ever in the world?
In the world, I don't know. There was, of course, an unintended one, which was the Twin Towers of New York. But that was a very different kind of thing, right? In this one, the major problem was the proximity of what was there. There was a lot of residential real estate, which was at risk if the demolition did not go as planned. So the only way we could do it is to do it by what's called a vertical waterfall. The demolition contract was given by Noida Authority to an Indian company called Edifice Engineering, who had done a demolition in Kochi of an illegal construction on the, whatever you call it, backwaters front or whatever. So they had some experience, and they had a South African partner called Jet Demolition who were very good at this. So they had come in. The problem was that nobody had any confidence because it had never been done. So the Supreme Court simply said Central Building Research Institute has to supervise and make sure it is done as per the interests of public safety.
And that's how it lands on your table?
That's what lands on my table. So, now, CBRI had a fabulous team, but they had no experience in explosives. They had fabulous experience in structures. Luckily, CSI had another institute, Central Institute of Mining and Fuels Research in Dhanbad, who were top-notch in explosives. And I had worked on explosives in my early days in my career, so I had some sense. So some 9,000 holes had to be drilled in these two towers. 3,500 kgs of explosives had to be put in without blowing up unintended, right? We had to test whether the explosives really worked by doing a test blast before the actual blast. So we actually looked at all kinds of failure modes. There was, and this was probably not well known to people, there was a fully pressurized gas pipeline under the property, which services the power station at Dadri. So we could not depressurize it beyond a limit, otherwise the power would have gone out for hours.
Right. And for a very large area as well.
For a very, very large area.
Right, right.
So we had to be very, very creative. Working closely with Jet Demolition and the teams from CSIR and Edifice Engineering, we did crazy things like we put containers between the existing building and the building to be demolished, loaded them up with rubber tires, truck tires to cushion the blast if it went the wrong way. Spent hours doing calculations which had to be simulated on a supercomputer to make sure they were precise. When we evacuated the buildings, we actually had all the stray cats and dogs physically removed. We had the birds' nests relocated. We wanted to be as careful as we could. Another CSIR institute in Chandigarh designed the water sprayers that would keep the dust down. It was an enormous public effort. The local police, the local administration. I mean, I don't think we can take credit, but what did happen, for those who saw it, is we had an almost perfect waterfall. We were off by about 1%. Sure. So the debris hit the outside boundary wall of one adjacent complex and made a small amount of damage, but otherwise almost as per plan.
This is phenomenal. And of course, I was at ground zero. I happened to live in the complex adjacent where, we had, I think maybe the top floor, maybe bounce off of some of those tires and land, and break the boundary wall. But I think it was phenomenal. And I can only imagine how many, months of preparation would have gone in and how many sleepless nights you would have had prior, because just the responsibility, because I see that area and how built it is, and, also what's happening at Emerald Court and at ATS on the other side. But hats off and well done. Yeah.
Yeah, I think those compliments are really due to the team. I can only say that I happened to be technically in charge at the right time because of all these coincidences.
And what would have been the worst case scenario had something gone wrong? What could have potentially happened on that day as well?
So there were 2-3 potential things that could have gone wrong. One is that it would have actually tilted towards and damaged the adjacent buildings. There was actually a probability of that, so we strengthened the foundations of Emerald Court, or rather, we didn't, but the errant builder was made to pay to do that. Some 57 pillars, in our opinion, from structural assessment were substandard, so they had to re-strengthen it. That was one risk. The second risk was that the debris would not fall as planned, and then debris clearance, if it fell into other compounds, would be a nightmare. Then there was the dust cloud, that if there wasn't enough dispersing wind, our dispersion patterns would be inaccurate, and the dust cloud could hang over the place for a long time, maybe cause respiratory diseases. Also, a lot of people had to move out during the demolition. So another objective was get them back in there as fast as possible. So there were a very large number of scenarios. And like I said, I think we got a lot of cooperation at the end of the day from the Noida authorities, from the adjacent societies, from the law and order. They were absolutely fabulous.
Yeah, I think it was a great job because we stayed out for a day extra, but I think the disbursement of the cloud was quick, even though I think bulk of the debris landed, at least the granules, the particles came into our complex, but cleaned up very, very quickly as well. How about that pipeline? Was that a potential nightmare?
It was a potential risk, but we really overprotected that risk best as we could. We piled it high with tires. We designed the blast to go away from the pipeline as far as possible, and all of that. So it was literally like trying to play basketball with your hands tied.
Yeah. Cannot even imagine that, but yes, wow. But yes, all's well that ends well, and I think it all went off really well, and I think it'll probably be a case study, for years, if not generations to come.
Yeah, I think it's also a message, right? I mean, the technical case study is one thing, but the message that justice prevails was really important.
Yeah, agree.